Or you may want to,
wait.
yeah, you may want to log into the data tracker to be able to edit the notes, by the way. I think this guest roast is you, and yeah.
Yeah.
Martina, do you want to wait a few minutes more for Christian? Or do you think we can start?
Let's start, I guess.
Okay.
If he doesn't know the slides, he can have a look later.
Yeah, I'm sure he can catch up pretty quickly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's do that. Okay, well, Welcome everyone, meaning Martin and Ricard for now. This is an interim meeting of the whole working group. This is Marco, my co-chairs are Jaime and Karsten, who cannot be here today. And the note well applies as it is an official IETF meeting. It's about APR. So if you are aware of any APR related to technical content you discuss, you really are supposed to disclose it as soon as possible. Beside that, it's also about our code of conduct. So be nice and professional to each other. And today in the agenda, we have only one topic as far as I know, the SBCB records for co-op, thinking of DNS over co-op as main use case, but also beyond that, with the number of relations, possible dependencies between different documents that we would like to untangle, especially in the interest of proceeding DNS over co-op sooner than later. Any other things you want to discuss today, by the way, because there's no agenda pressure really?
Not from my side.
None, all right. Then we can get the main topic, and Martin, you can request the sharing. And there you go.
Okay, yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Martin Lenders. I guess most of you know me. What I want to talk about, as Marco already introduced, is service bindings, DNS service bindings with co-op. And so just to summarize a little bit what happened so far. Originally, we wanted to add the discovery of DNS over co-op resolvers via DNS, DHCP, and router advertisements. And there is a solution for that with service binding records or the service parameter fields then in the DHCP and router advertisement messages. But the problem is that de facto for this type of discovery, only co-op over TLS is specified, because there's an ALPN ID specified in the RFC that introduced it. So co-op over DTLS needs its own ALPN ID, and for that we allocated already the co-ID, but the experts asked for a draft. And also there are some missing components, like how to specify different co-op transport protocols, and how to do OSCOR and ad hoc with it, and also for doc specifically, how to discover the path. We specified how to discover the path using the doc path key in the DNS over co-op draft, which basically goes a similar route than as a DO path, so for DNS over HTTPS, but we specified the value as a CBOR sequence in of text strings to be more in line with the constraint use case. And of course, if you want to represent it as text, you can just use the CBOR diagnostic format. For the rest, we went the route to first go with this DNR draft we wrote for IETF 119, but there was a problem that we have now a DNS over co-op draft that depends as a normative references on this new draft that tries to solve a lot of new problems, and also it was a bit messy because we basically do it backwards, because DNS over co-op is just one use case for these type of service discoveries. At IETF 119, we first decided to split out the co-allocation out of DNR and cite that in doc. So this is basically what we've done. We made the DNR draft. So just to give a note, most of this work is currently not published. It's basically just GitHub pull requests or just the GitHub history. But we made the DNR draft, just a problem statement on how to do DDR or DNR, so dedicated network resolver and dedicated DNS resolvers of OSCOR with OSCOR and ad hoc. We also put all the co-op transport discovery into transport indication, the transport indication draft that is currently a working group draft. Sorry, and we also put, as we decided at the last IETF, the ALPN IT for DTLS into its separate draft. But then we also, when we wrote the DNS over co-op draft section for that, we also discovered, okay, there is no way, no description of how to construct actually a co-op request from a service B record. And so there is a write-up on that, and it's currently in this DTLS over service B records. But the question is, this fits actually more into the transport indication draft. But then, of course, we would have the problem that DNS over co-op would, again, like the idea was originally that the minimum doc bundle would be this DNS over co-op draft and this service B record draft. But when we move the service B to co-op request construction to transport indication, then this other draft would also become a normative reference, but maybe it's not, because, for example, for service B records to HTTP request construction, there is no actual specification. So maybe we can get away with actually not talking about the actual not specifying the actual construction for DNS over co-op, and just say, yeah, do it however you think, and maybe sketch it out a little bit and then have the actual specification somewhere else, or maybe it's not even needed. But then this raises the question, do we actually need the normative references in DNS over co-op? Because this now then only specifies this co-ALPN ID, and since we already have ALPN IDs and have DNS over DDR and DNR, which are already RFCs, is this actually needed as a normative reference, or can we just say, hey, if you want to do co-op over DTLS, there is this draft, you can read it, but basically it's just this ID. So does this really require a normative reference is the question there. So and then the other scenario that we could have is that we just cite the transport indication where basically this construction is described, and we just refer when it comes to how to do a doc request out of this service B record, and cite that as a normative reference. So the question now is, how should we proceed? And actually, Marco already prepared this nice whiteboard in the notes, so maybe we can go in there and discuss it there. And yeah.
Thanks for trying to put this in order with nice figures. It helps. And yeah, at least the mindset I imagine was to fill that the table, and maybe we don't manage at the first round, but ideally it should reflect what the best way to proceed is in terms of which document specifies what component, and I hope I didn't miss any of either. References, if any at all, and if so, normative or informative, and any notes. I filled only what I was quite sure about, or at least uncontroversial. And in the notes, yeah, on the registration of the ALPN ID, so you showed the goal would be to have it in, let's see, yeah, in CoreDNR. Sorry, started from CoreDNR for the registration. That's what happened.
Yeah.
But now the new plan was about having that in co-op DTLS as VCB. But is that practically feasible, by the way? Because it happened, right? With CoreDNR. It's the reference draft in the registry.
It is, but that was only added later. I'm not sure at the moment. There we would have to ask Christian, who did all this. So he should know more about this. But yeah, currently it is the ALPN ID is for this draft, but as far as I know, it can be changed. Christian just joined.
Hello, Christian.
So give him, yeah.
Can you hear us, Christian?
Yes, sorry for being late.
Hi, no problem. Welcome. So Martina just completed the overview. We were starting, some hands-on activity on the notes with the hope to fill in that table, basically. And at least the mindset I had was have a clear view of the documents involved and clarify which document specifies what, any need for references, normative or informative, and any additional information. And eventually this will become the plan on how to proceed.
Looks good. I'm catching up there.
Okay.
So one question you might be able to answer right now is about the registration of the ALPN ID. So that currently refers to the DNR draft, right? But that happened after we published the DNR draft, and before there was no actual reference, right?
That happened as a consequence of publishing a DNR draft, and the later version now acknowledges that it is in, but we don't have to we don't have to take much care of that. As soon as we move around the section that says Ayana has registered this and that to a different document, I think we can just tell Ayana, yeah, like this document progressed, it was renamed, the section was moved, whatever. This is now the normative reference. I think that should just work like that.
So you may just ask Ayana to point to a different document altogether as a reference point.
Yes, basically that is what would happen also if we merge documents or if we split documents. So I think this will just be accepted.
Okay, when we get there, it would be good to have in the registry a link to an exact version number of a draft. This is related to, I think, still ongoing discussion on is it good enough to have internet drafts as reference in Ayana registries? Well,
yes, that is ongoing, but it is as it is right now there. So
yeah,
we have to make do with it.
Okay, so thinking of the table, basically, thinking of the plan to build, the component C3 is intended to be in the document D2, basically, right?
Right.
Okay. Oops, sorry. Yeah, and that's really because it has to be somewhere, and because that now uses D4 instead.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, and initially the idea was to have D1, so DNS over COAP, with a normative reference to DTLS SBCB, so to D2. That was before there was a plan split out from D2 to D3 about the COAP message building from SBCB records, right?
Well, the split
yes.
it didn't happen yet.
Right.
Just to be clear.
It's just planned, yeah.
Yeah, it's and just to reiterate that, because I didn't do this talk, say this in my talk, I think at least it more belongs into transport indication, because it is it is actually about like how to do service B records with co-op. And this is exactly what transport indication in part is about. While the DTLS service B record draft just specifies a number. So,
So if we do the full how to construct the URI for any service thing in D3, which I still think is a good idea, we will want to avoid the normative reference D1 to D3 directly or transitively.
exactly. That was.
I think we can express like steps that a client has to take with that record, like the very concrete actions, and then just have an informative reference. That a generalization of this is being developed in transport indication.
Yeah, that was basically what I said in the talk. Yeah.
So I think you had a slide on that, right, Martina? Can you move back the slide set so that basically this. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Sorry for reiterating. Sorry for being late.
No problem.
It's great. And the building of the co-op request is definitely general. So I agree it fits better in transport indication. On the reference, you mentioned even the possibility, Martina, to just not say anything at all about that in the DNS over co-op. So not even informative reference, right?
Well, not saying over it, but being more a little bit not being that exact as Christian said, but more like a little bit more wishy-washy and saying, okay, find a way to make the service B record a co-op request. I mean, because and that's basically the reason why I say this, because this is basically how service B records for HTTPS are handled. There is no spec for that.
Right. So, well, that's easy. There's really nothing to refer to in the first place. Here we have something.
Do we know whom to ask in the SVCP/HTTPS record crowd about like whether they are planning to do this generalization?
Not that I know.
So maybe just one of the authors then, or the group that specified it.
Yeah, maybe we could ask the DNS op chairs that won't know about anything about this. So yeah, maybe the authors of the service B draft RFCs.
But yeah, there are fundamentally three options. Normative, of course, is better to avoid. If we can. There's nothing at all, or informative. Informative is fine depending on how you phrase it. And if you present it as an example of a way to do this, well, then informative should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it escalates to normative, and that's why I put also that additional link in the notes for reference. The moment you present it as more as an example, and like, for instance, an optional feature that exists to use, and well, if you take that path, that's really the way to do things. But informative should be a way if you phrase it as an example. Yeah. Do you think that is the case?
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If we just say, for example, with the algorithm proposed in there and there or something like that.
Okay, so thinking of components to start with, the request construction seems really something for transport indication then. On the list from the point of view of distributing components, that's clearer. Thinking of references, so this is like suggesting to have an informative reference from D1 to D3, basically. Yeah. So now this slide is suggesting there's actually no reference at all needed from DNS over co-op to DTLS as BCB. Is that the right reading?
It's not necessarily required. No, it's just like probably more D3 would then at some point reference D2. If you want to use co-ops, use that ALPN ID.
Right, because after all, if you are running the DNS over co-op and you want to do DTLS-based discovery, well, as an example of way you need to look into transport indication, and that's where you'll find the use of DTLS as BCB anyway, right?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Well, I was trying to confirm what were you suggesting, if I understood correctly. It may be more than transport indication refers to co-op DTLS as BCB, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you want to use a discovery based on DTLS as an example way, you'd look into transport indication, and that's where you find a detailed sequence of steps and things to do where you finally see the DTLS SVCB information to in turn have to look at. So yeah, double checking the notes now. DOC would go informatively to transport indication, which would go normatively to SVCB. Yep. Right. While D4, well, that's the least urgent thing, but would that also refer to D3?
Which one refer to D3?
Core DNR, which is basically for everything left out for now on OSCOR, EDOC, and so on.
Well, because that we now went to the direction that we actually want to do core DNR more as a as a problem statement, and the LPN ID for DTLS isn't really a problem. It's just it needs to be specified.
Right.
But maybe it makes sense to put the specification of the DTLS ALPN into the transport indication draft. What was I thinking?
No, if the transport indication is expected to be a bit slower.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. So I was just adding a potential FAQ entry to D2 saying like, why do we do this here and not just in DNS over co-op? And the answer would be because it's not just usable for DNS, but it's very general. But
Yeah.
yes, we might just move it into transport indication, like. And yeah, I think it might fit there. Yes.
I mean, if we just informatively reference it and we have like we have, okay, here is how you can construct the service. Here's an example on how to construct a doc request from a service B record with this doc path option given. And then we specify this in transport indication.
The hard part is that we would be normatively referencing the IANA registry, in a sense, on a record that is introduced by a draft. So,
well, we don't specify this record specifically. We just say, hey, here's doc path. We don't have to say currently it is only specified for co-op over TLS.
Yeah, But we would need, okay, so we would say like, and if you find something else in the IANA registry, then you can use that with whatever it's specified for too.
I mean, that's basically just future-proofing it, but
Yeah.
you don't have to say this, I guess. Otherwise, you run the risk to basically only make it on that IANA registration registry table dependent, and maybe we don't want that either. So I would just go for here. Here is something how to get a doc pass, the path for a doc server from a service B record, and yeah, how to construct the request from that. You can find an example for that here, or
I think we would need to say how to construct the request, because otherwise it's
that's a question. Do we? Because DNSOP managed to do it without.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to give an example if it's just an example.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, this would need to say at least something about like this is a CBOR sequence, and the things in there are intended to become co-op options. And co-op options, yeah, could be on any transport, so it would just be very implicit and hard to, I think, and possibly hard to follow for a user.
We can just say convert this CBOR sequence into. I mean, I already basically in my reasoning for the CBOR sequence, I gave already examples on how to convert this into a CBOR into CBOR options. So basically, I probably need to just expand on that. And then I might not even need to reference the transport indication, and
yeah, I think transport indication would be a useful reference from wherever we say that CBOR options are like turned into co-op options. Just stating that a generalization of this is work in progress, because otherwise people will not know whether the things that almost look the same are supposed to be the same or not.
So before you were also mentioning the possibility to move the component C3, so the ALPNID registration basically to transport indication to. So conceptually that would work, but then we may break the wish of Karsten of having way sooner than later a battery included DOC to ship. Right, and that's easier to achieve if we have the small document D2.
I mean, for real battery included, there is a lot of stuff already missing. That's my argument, because we don't have OSCORE, which is actually what we really want to use with DNS over co-op. We don't have any sense of having different co-op transport protocols defined, and we only have the doc path. But so do we really need to have batteries included just for co-op over DTLS, and just can't use for now co-op over TLS as an example?
Yeah, I think that co-op was born with DTLS in mind for security. So we have to point at something as obvious. First preferred choice, that for sure DTLS instead of TLS.
Yeah, true.
Otherwise, you're kind of forcing to consider TLS just for the sake of being aligned with an example, which is a bit too much to ask.
Yeah. So yeah, and under that sense, so that you're right. The DTLS spec is in the co-op or RC. Yeah, maybe it makes sense to make actually the reference to D2 a normative reference.
Yes.
Yeah, with D2 providing
D1.
C3.
With
Well, what we have in the
D2,
table
yeah,
now
with
already.
D2 providing C3, yes.
Yeah, just like it is. I was just entertaining the other proposal before, and I'm interpolating a lot my memories of that argument from Carsten about the battery included. But he may elaborate better.
Yeah, I think the normative reference from 1 to 2 makes sense because, like, if it were not for our worries that people will not use CO because it's from somewhere DNS, we would make D1 and D2 one document. But we don't want to have we don't want to reference into a document about DNS all the time. And if that is the only reason we have D1 and D2 separate, then we can aim for back-to-back publication with a normative reference from D1 to D2, and we don't have to hand wave.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking in the latest version in the data tracker of D1 DNS over co-op, you just have a quite open sentence of, well, this and that is out of scope for now. We are just exploring the problem space in D4. Do you plan to keep that sort of argument and the same informative reference to D4 after removing all the DTLS related things from D4?
Well, D4 just will be about well, at the moment it's DNR for score, but it also then, of course, because DNR uses service B records, how to potentially do service B records with OSCORE, and basically the current version of not the current version, but this GitHub pull requests version I referenced in my slides. This one, let me go back to the slide.
Right.
This one basically just explores the possibilities on how to do OSCORE or ad hoc with DDR and DNR with OSCORE or ad hoc, and in turn, of course, then do service B records and co-op service binding discovery with OSCORE in.
So even if reducing the scope of core DNR, the idea is to still keep in DNS over co-op an informative reference to it, because that's where in due time things about OSCORE and DDoP will happen.
Oh, they may not happen there, but at least there will be a reference that you can follow.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's the main use case for why we want to have service binding records for co-op at all.
Okay, so that means also an informative reference like now already.
No, the other way around. The other way around.
From
D4
D1 to
informative references, D1.
Isn't it also you're right that's also in that direction, but isn't it already also from D1 to D4?
It might be already that, but I don't think it's necessary. Now that we talk about it a little bit at length.
Okay, that will be removing it then, because I'm pretty sure it's there now.
But
I think it's only there because of because service B, so D2 doesn't exist yet.
But I think it does make sense to have an informative reference, because if you describe how to use that and someone goes in there and looks for, like, okay, how do I use it with OSCORE? Then at least they find that this is not solved, but there is work ongoing. So I think that would be a very legitimate informative reference.
Looking at section 3 of DNS over co-op, you are pointing to core DNR now informatively as a place where you expose solutions for co-op. In general, I understand you didn't mind the focus on the DTLS case, but still, it's where you'll keep building on alternatives, right?
Well, the idea is to keep it to OSCORE and ADHOC at the moment, so other people can pick up that work. Because from the little bit I did so far, I don't feel like deep into the topic at the moment with OSCORE and ADHOC to do this on my own. So I will just say, here are the pieces. Please pick them up. So, and that's why I also did this just as a problem statement, so we don't have to like find a solution there.
Also, the gut feeling I'm building up for the solutions is that there will really be two solutions, one for ACE and one for Lake, for ad hoc, because there are two things you can put in there. Either you refer to an AS and say that you're like, talk to it, don't bother going directly for that thing. Talk to an AS first and like enroll in some domain, and then use some profiles. Some ACE profiles, some of which might be ad hoc, and the alternative is doing something that is more TLSA style, where you don't do ACE but directly describe the Lake credentials, and those will be like those may contain a few of the identical boilerplate, but those I think will be kind of separate solutions.
But do you expect a hard split into two different documents between the non-ACE and the ACE parts?
A split. We don't have a like. Right now we have a problem statement document, so there is nothing to split yet.
Right. Okay, so for a while it can continue that way.
Yeah,
more to check on.
There might be overlap even in the offers, because I hope that I hope to interest some of the Lake contributors to jump in here. But yeah.
Okay,
let's describe the problem first and then solve it.
Sure. Okay, so you don't expect from D1 a reference to D4 really anymore.
I think it would make sense to have that reference, because someone who wants to use co-op over DNS.
But talking from the from the reducing the references in DNS over co-op perspective, I'm not sure if we want that. Like, okay, there is no. I mean, we can basically outright just say in doc there is no service B request discovery for OSCORE yet. Done. And then an interested reader might find the problem statement.
So maybe I missed some of the. Probably, certainly, I did miss some of the discussion. What is the purpose of reducing the references, especially for the informative references? And we're talking about an informative reference here.
Yeah, I don't see an issue with having 2,000 references as long as they're informative.
Okay.
Then
I misunderstood.
The problem is being very careful with normative references, and DTU seems necessary, but we can handle it pretty quickly. Adding more informative pointers is not an issue,
especially if it's if it benefits the reader, who doesn't have to be super interested and dig around, but just follow the link, read the latest version, and then follow another link to the solutions.
Yeah. And even if it's going to be just a problem statement for a while, it can still be useful.
Yeah.
So that would mean informative D4, but you were also saying you anticipate the other way around. So informative from D4 to D1, of course, just to give context on what you're talking about.
It's the main use case.
Yeah. if D4 is about like what is the problem and says like what is not the problem, then it will back up that this is not the problem by referring to like this is solved there, this is solved there, this is solved there, but the gap is.
So in the same spirit, I believe that you expect D2 to also have an informative reference to D1, right? Because it's a relevant use case.
I don't care. I don't know.
Me neither. I would rather say D3 might also have an informative reference to D1, but that's completely out of scope,
Yes.
I think.
Also D2, right?
Sorry, I meant the other way around. D4 might have an informative reference to D3.
Okay.
Because like here, the transport stuff is discussed here. So look there if you want to talk about transport. We are just talking about object security here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I still miss one. Don't you expect an informative reference also from D2 to D1? I think so, right?
Yeah, not. I'm not sure if this is such a hard expect, because as we stated in the very beginning, the co-op over DTLS service binding discovery is not necessarily bound to or the ALPN ID in itself, because the only reason this ALPN ID doesn't exist is because it didn't exist when the RFC was written. So, but there is a co-op over TLS, ALPN ID, and ALPN IDs can be used for different stuff as well, not just service bindings. So,
okay.
So it would definitely be informative. At most, it would say something like, the reason that we are doing this now is that the requirement came up in blah.
Yeah. So it might be an informative references in the sense, here's an example why we use it, but it isn't. I wouldn't say it isn't a necessary.
Oh no, sure. It's just the same thinking that we had when discussing D4 having a reference to D1, basically. It started because of that. It's useful there. Of course, not only there. Sure. Is this covering everything? I mean, all the components are distributed with no repetitions. References seem clear. There's only one normative reference in D1. And that's about something that comes back in D3, but at that point, it wouldn't be a problem anymore. On the topic of DocPath exactly, I noticed before, a GitHub mail due to a comment from Tim Wycinski on one of your PRs. On the name of DocPath, he's suggesting alternatives. Co-op path or co-op path with a single joint P.
That's quite new, right? Oh yeah.
That's new. We'll have to come back to that.
It was.
There is nothing. There's no reason to short. So it can be as long as we want it because it's the number.
Yeah.
So the string can be explicit.
But don't you want exactly DOC path because it's a path to a DOC server?
Yes.
I mean that is really something that we can discuss with the SVCP experts when we talk about how is that generalization happening, because really so there are two pieces of information in there. There is the ALPN or the transport indication, whatever transport indication-ish thing, but every SVCP binding is also for a service, and really that service is tied to the DOH path. So like looking at the HTTP side, they say DOH path, but it might that might have been a mistake, and an HTTP path would have been the better choice. That's quite possible, because I don't think that they thought through the full generalization thing. And if they now think that HTTP path or REST path would have been the better choice, then we can revisit this.
Sorry, my door.
But it is tricky, because the tricky part is there is the service which is highly abstract. For example, DNS could be DNS over COAP or DNS over TCP over HTTP. There is the ALPN, where some of those have joint semantics. For example, H1 and H3 are all URI aliased. But okay, so there's the name of there's the kind of the service. Is it DNS? Is it printer configuration? Whatever. And there is the transport, and the transport is currently indicated usually by ALPNs. But those also fall together into something that constitutes the URI. And it is convenient that they say DOH path, because a DNS service might have a transport that is HTTP-ish and a transport that is COAP-ish. And we can't have a general path, because there's not necessarily URI aliasing between the HTTP and the COAP versions. And even if there are different ways to use that resource on the different transports.
Okay.
So
Sorry,
DOH path makes sense over path. Whether it makes sense over HTTP path, I don't know.
So I think the reason why there's a DO path is because it's not a parse in the URI sense, because it's basically a URI template in DO, because there you need to put the DNS query into the GET request, and thus need a query parameter for that, and that's why they decided to go for URI templates. And so that might be the reason why there is a specific DO path. And maybe for HTTPS services you have something else, but maybe they don't even care about paths there.
No, there are two kind of separate usages of service records. The one is to construct to convey that there is a service at a URI, and the other is that there is a transport for a host. And the former includes the information on the latter, but for the latter it doesn't make sense to have a path, because it's like whenever you have a URI, you look into the host and scheme and host, and then do the service lookup, and by that time you already know your path.
So one of the experts seems to be in the GitHub, so do you want to maybe ask him?
Yeah, we can do that there, but I think we should. Yeah, I'm not sure whether we best like start asking this or start asking the general question. Don't know yet. Like, whatever you think is better, let's do it before we wait for me to make up my mind.
Okay.
Yeah, the comments also says that docpath sounds a bit vague. I don't know in which sense, because C stands for co-op, and co-op appears just spelled out later on in his proposals that instead remove the D of DNS.
Yeah, that's what was my question as well, because like in this case co-op is a more vague option.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, co-op path might make sense if we can rely on the information about which. I mean, whenever we get a service record, we should rely on the information which service is being requested here already. So I think co-op path makes sense. But we should double check with the HTTP people whether that's just because there was a URI template or whether they had a good reason to not call it HTTP path. Because they could say they could have called it HTTP template and reused it for different non-DNS services. I think one problem is that there is no example other than DNS.
I mean, does it make sense? Because to my mind, this is basically the indicator. What you got here as a service B record is actually the DNS information.
No, I think
and otherwise you are basically saying here is a co-op path.
No, so whenever you receive and that's part of the information I tried to spell out in that pull request in that very verbose pull request on how to build that path. Whenever you receive a service record, a service B record, you should know either from context or explicitly from the DNS response what service was requested in the first place. In the DNS case, that is because you requested a particular name. I mean, you get it as _DNS dot something. And in the DHCP case, because it is coming along with the DHCP option that indicates a DNS record. But at any rate, you know that it is for the DNS service. So I don't know what other path could be in there. Like they couldn't be like a printer queue path doesn't make sense there. And vice versa, in an _printer record, it doesn't make sense to have a doe path or a doc path.
But then path would be sufficient and good for every case, right?
So path, because doc and doe contain two pieces of information. It contains the DNS information, which I think is redundant. But the information, is it for co-op or for HTTP, is relevant because HTTP and co-op can be translated, but the applications don't follow that translation because, for example, DNS over co-op is not just the trivial translation of DNS over HTTP.
Yeah.
And there is not, so for example, if you have an H3 and H2 ALPN, any HTTP path necessarily means the same on both of them. But if there is a CO or co-op ALPN, then that's a completely different URI namespace. And just because we are in DNS and very far away from URIs, we shouldn't disregard BCP 82 Swift on like not introducing URI aliases.
Okay. Well, other than this naming thing, this important, but I think easier to settle. Maybe we managed to untangle a bit the relation between the documents and the need for references and of which kind. Are you happy with the possible plan in the table?
I am.
Or at least it's a first good answer to the question of the last slide. And I believe it's still aligned with the sort of thing that Carsten was hoping for. Of course, we don't want to abandon at all the kind of work started in D4. And so I hope that can also continue. But of course, it's less urgent.
So one thing that might help us out here is that a lot of the things that are in D4 currently on the co-op over on the ad hoc side will be picked up by Marco, you and Mias for the onion style addresses, because
Right.
they're essentially just because they are kind of piggybacking on having a TLSA record, but for cozy.
So onion cop becomes more of a guinea pig also for that.
A guinea pig, or a driver that, or more like a driver that kind of accidentally, but there are no such accidents, outputs usable results for the other half.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but I've received a message from Martin asking whether we can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
because
I
I wasn't
wanted
sure.
to, like, you have been quiet a bit, but not for that. If you had been quiet for that long, I would have seriously doubted my
I was
tracking of who's around.
maybe there was a delay because I was talking and then you continued talking, so I wasn't sure if you were hearing me. So
So I'm sorry if I talked over you.
okay.
It is not intended.
Yeah, as I said, might have come from a delay, but not sure.
Okay, procedurally, since looks like we have a good proposal, Martina or Christian, would you mind send a mail to the mailing list summarizing this table basically? And if there's no objection in, say, 1 week or so, then you can update the documents or create the documents according to this plan.
Like, should we even wait there? I mean, none of those, like, other than transport indication, none of those are adopted documents. So,
I'm just thinking that we are a very little crowd in the meeting.
that is a valid point.
And this is a sort of restructuring compared to what we have in mind. Last time we seriously discussed this in the working group, so maybe it's better to give the opportunity to more people to comment and in case object, but I don't expect anyone complaining here. This looks sound.
Okay, then I'll send the whiteboard link, not the whiteboard link, the whiteboard itself around somehow, and
yeah, that would work as long as it's clear what symbol means what, but
just put a line in here. So
yeah, exactly. What is below that line should work. That looks good. And it evolved quite a lot, especially the shifting on considering also transport indication here was of the last 2 or 3 days, right? Not more than that. It wasn't around before last weekend.
No.
Right.
I mean, we started about the splitting and stuff like 2 weeks ago, but like on Monday we were like,
yeah,
okay, now it's starting to get a little bit out of hand.
Right. No, your slides also helped a lot because I tried to navigate the pull requests, and at some point I just stopped because it was too much.
I mean,
But
I
now
could
it's clear.
put like at least these 2 picture slides also in my mail if it's not too large.
Sure.
Like wait,
Yeah,
this one and that one.
Yeah, you can also add the link to the slides in case one
Yeah.
wants to check the whole thing in detail. But
True,
yes.
true.
Okay, let's go for it. Sounds great.
Then
And then hopefully we can also put D2 in a sort of fast track because it's definitely uncontroversial.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to check with you if you actually expect it to be standard track like it still says, I think, or if because you'd be focused on the ALP and ID registration only, it can be informative instead.
I just want, we do have a normative pointer there from
Yeah.
D1.
That's
So if
probably
you want,
enough to.
I don't object to it being informative, but mind you that it will be a down ref that we'll have to argue.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is probably an argument that we'll have to have anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, Martina, I just now heard you talking in.
I didn't say anything this
Okay,
time. Maybe at least not consciously.
What DOC really needs is the registered value, right?
Yes, but
Yes.
but for lack of the generic way of forming the request, it will need to say one word or two about how to use how kind of that it then goes how the yeah, it might imply a few things. Yeah, we can also try for just a normal.
No, I understand you want to explain the meaning of that value.
Yeah, but if we get away with just saying and it works the same way there with those and those values, we can just put it as informative and make it an informative reference, and like if anyone complains in late review, we can still elevate it. I don't know.
But your original plan is standard struct anyway. Let's keep it that way for now.
I don't have a plan.
It's not urgent to decide, but for sure we'll get there. The reference feels definitely normative. Okay. That was a good discussion. Thank you. Any other topic you wanted to discuss today related to core? None. And well, as a reminder, there's no interim meeting scheduled at all in 2 weeks from today. Also because of the collision with the lightweight IoT security hackathon in Paris. And the next one then would be in 4 weeks from now on June 5. I expect to have a conflict and to not be able to attend it, but Karsten and or Jaime will be around for that. Okay, if there's nothing else, talk to you, see you soon, some of you.
See you
Thank
soon.
you all.
Thanks a lot.
And apologies
Thank you.
again for being
No
late.
problem. Million thanks, Rikard, for the minutes.
No problem.
Yes, thank you.
Good discussion. I don't have the full background of these documents, but hope
I
sounds
didn't
like you made
notice you were
progress.
around.
Yeah.
So yes, the three of us will look into the onion style addresses with Ed then.
Of course. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.